You are currently leading in the polls. The primary is August 4th. So let's do a thought experiment. You become the Democratic nominee for Senate. So let's go over some things that Mike Rogers, the likely Republican nominee, and Republicans who've already reserved $45 million in advertising are going to say about you. That you want to defund the police because you've tried to delete posts from 2020 saying you want to do just that. Do you?
Let's talk about what I'm going to say about them, because that's the thing that Democrats tend to get wrong. We're so worried about what they're going to say about us that we forget that we also have mouths that work. So Mike Rogers is a guy who's never met a pharma lobbyist he didn't love. Like, he gets really mad when you call him a pharma lobbyist, but he spends so much time lobbying around with pharma lobbyists that you wonder whether or not he wanted to be one. And he hasn't explained how he made $14 million and moved to a McMansion in Florida. But during his time in Congress, because of the influence of the pharma lobby on him and the hundreds of thousands of dollars he took, this guy voted to raise prescription drug prices I don't know how many times, then helped to architect the legislation that turned into the opioid epidemic. I'm looking forward to forcing him to answer that question to Michiganders who lost family members, both because they could not afford their medication and because they died of opioid overdoses. I'm a doctor who rebuilt the health department, eliminated medical debt, and made sure that families had Narcan when they needed it. So I like my chances on that one. Then let's talk about his trouble with Donald Trump.
But if I'm a Michigander and I say, wait a minute, I hear you, and I get you, and I'm locked in on all those issues, but I do care what you think about funding police and what you said
what I'd say
years ago.
I was a Wayne County health director, and when the juvenile detention facility was in shambles, I declared a public health state of emergency to rebuild it. I raised everyone's salaries and wages immediately 35% so we could keep the folks who were leaving so that we could staff the facility. So if folks want to talk about what I said, I'm just going to point to what I did. Right? When I had the opportunity to make sure that folks were safe in the facility, both the youth that were there and the people working there, by making sure that we could staff it appropriately, I did exactly that. So I'll let my record do the talking. And we're going to let Mike Rogers' record do his talking.
And they will probably say you hang around with Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker has said things that are virulently anti-American, they would say, and anti-Semitic. Do you have any regrets about Hassan Piker?
Well,
you know that's going to be an issue.
Major, I'm hanging out with you. I don't know everything you've said.
Right.
I'm sure you've said some things I disagree with. You've said some things I agree with. It tends to be in the real world, we hold people accountable for what they said, not what somebody around them said. And it's this funny gotcha game that Democrats love to play and Republicans love to play, which I think people are sick and tired of in politics. So if you want to play this game where you're going to hold me accountable, like, guilt by association based on something that somebody else said, I'm just going to make sure that people know what Mike Rogers has said, what Donald Trump has said, which he so desperately sought an endorsement from and can't seem to figure out how to shake. Because, Donald Trump's approval rating is in the gutter. Everything Donald Trump touches turns into trash. So I want to make sure that the broader public understands that about him.
Let's talk about something I experienced when I was in Dearborn, Michigan in 2024. I talked to voters there who were becoming increasingly estranged, and some described as completely estranged from the Biden administration and Kamala Harris over Gaza. And they used the word genocide. You have used the word genocide.
I like to use words that meet the definition that I use them for, so yes.
Right. And there is a United Nations Genocide Convention adopted in 1948, defines genocide as any 5 acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Explain to my audience why you believe Israel is guilty of that in Gaza. Because it argues it is not systematic. It is in pursuit of larger security concerns.
I'll point you to human rights organizations in Israel itself who call this a genocide. I'll point you to the fact that the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, have all rallied around the notion that what has been done is a war crime under the definition of genocide. So it's not just me, it's not just the people in Dearborn. This is just a word that ought to be used when public officials in a country say that they want to annihilate a people as a function of where they live and what their ethnic and religious identities are, and then carry out the systematic bombing of them, their kids, their schools, their hospitals, the annihilation of any opportunity to actually live a dignified life in that place again, and do so after having said that they were going to do it. I don't know what else to call that except for a genocide. Like when you target the Palestinian people as a function of their being Palestinian, and then try to move them into neighboring countries because they speak the same language, you commit war crime after war crime targeting their infrastructure, their schools, their hospitals, I don't know what else to call that. I mean, I guess, Major, what I'd say is what else would you call that except for trying to tiptoe around the interests of the foreign government who did it? I mean, what's the other word?
And that word and the willingness to say it has, in many races, possibly also in this one that you're involved in, had a galvanizing effect with younger voters. Why do you think that is?
This is a moral Rorschach test. Like, if you can't identify the systematic murder of tens of thousands of kids as a genocide, and then you want to say that you're a fighter for human rights and dignity, that's just hypocrisy. So I just think that if you can't call the most heinous violation of human rights what it is, it's hard for me to believe that you're going to go and fight the Trump administration or fight the pharma CEOs or fight the health insurance CEOs who are making my life unlivable.
And when the Israeli government argues that, as it has publicly many times, look, since the hostages were brought back, they were held by Hamas, and the ceasefire is held, and aid has returned to Gaza, how can you call what's gone on since then genocide?
I just disagree that the ceasefire is held.
Okay.
It's that you've had unilateral devastation of people, literally 4 figures, murders of innocent people in Gaza since the ceasefire, so-called ceasefire, was declared. But the bigger picture that I think we have to ask here, and that plays in my race, is: do we want our tax dollars to be spent backstopping apartheid at minimum, genocide at maximum, wars that we have no business fighting, because of the impact of a special interest that has spent $23 million in my race and counting?
That special interest being?
AIPAC. And they're spending their money to try to tell us that the best use of our foreign policy is to backstop a foreign government. I mean, that's a pretty crazy thing. I mean, I just want you to step back and think about that for a minute. The biggest spender in a race for Senate in Michigan wants to take your tax dollars and not spend them on your kids or your schools or your infrastructure or your health care. It wants to spend them to buy bombs and tanks for foreign governments. That's a pretty crazy thing. And I, as someone running for Senate in Michigan, want my tax dollars spent in Michigan to build roads and bridges in Michigan and provide health care in Michigan and schools in Michigan. I am running for senator from Michigan, and I don't want Michigan tax dollars to be misappropriated abroad to drop bombs on other people and their kids. It's not that hard.
You recently came out with a proposal that's pretty aggressive on regulating artificial intelligence. And if I read the articles correctly, you said the time to act is yesterday. And you want public ownership of every AI company that's based in the United States, safety requirements, and something that Bernie Sanders has talked about, which is a sovereign wealth fund that would be obtained through 50% taxation of AI revenue, creating $7 trillion for Americans. Walk me through all that.
Yeah. There's nowhere that I go in Michigan. I've been to 110 cities now, 450 public events. I go everywhere, talk to everybody, Major. My name's Abdul. I know that. And there's not a town hall that I do where people don't ask me about either data centers or AI. And it's particularly young people who worry about, will I be able to have a job? Will I be able to sell my intellectual capital on a market for money like people have been able to do for a very long time now? And I have to be honest with them that if AI continues to move through our economy as fast as it is, unfettered, I can't say yes to you. And I think people are seeing—
Do you believe that is why these encounters you have with young people is that for the first time in my memory and in what I've read, a young cohort of a population is more hostile to an emerging technology than any other cohort? To my mind, that's never happened before.
And it's also because this emerging technology is different than previous emerging technologies. Most technologies, as they moved through the economy, took—
And the early adopters are always kids.
They are. And
But
the early adopters are still kids, but they're also seeing this up close. And they're realizing that this is moving a lot faster than previous technologies have. Like, it used to take 25 to 50 years, which is kind of the career lifetime of somebody, for a new technology to fully change our economy. AI is, I mean, we're talking about like 2022 when ChatGPT came out. It's 2026, and this is proliferating way faster. So you're talking about young people who started college thinking, I want to be a computer scientist, who graduated college.
And they see their future being gobbled up.
Yeah, they graduate college and there are no jobs in computer science. Like, that's how fast this is moving. So we've just got to get right. And what I'm proposing is just the notion that AI is new technology, but democracy is old technology, one we love in America. And I'm saying that AI needs to sit under democracy. We need democratic control of the way that AI is being proliferated. And right now, the tech giants are proliferating this with zero guardrails, a technology that they openly agree could change the social contract itself, could eliminate 50% of jobs, and has the risk of causing existential crisis in humanity, whether it slips control of humans or it falls in the wrong hands. And I'm just saying that we need a level of safety and a level of assurance, and I don't trust the people who make billions of dollars off of this to get it right when it comes to putting our safety over their profits.
Because the incentive structures
exactly. And what I'm proposing,
are what? Fill out that sentence.
Make as much money as you possibly can, hope that you own the strongest AI when all of this is said and done, and then you can own the future of the economy into the future. Like that is the proposal that is currently being proposed to us, and people see it for what it is. And what I'm saying is these corporations can exist, but half of the wealth that they create needs to be shared with people who created the internet. Like we created the internet, but you and I are creating the internet as we talk. This is all going to go on the internet. And guess what? There are going to be AI bots that can scrape our conversation.
Your underlying point is AI doesn't exist with without all the data that we have no control over, but we ought to.
Exactly that. And also, I'm saying that 50 plus 1% of your board needs to be either democratically appointed or elected. That's not to say that you can't continue to do great research and be leading edge. That is to say that you need to put our well-being first. Look, I went to medical school, and the overwhelming principle in medicine is first, do no harm. And I think AI should be developed under those same premises. First, do no harm. Is there great benefit that AI can do? Yeah.
Probably, especially in the medical field.
Yes, but I don't want it to be in a situation where it's being used by an insurance company to do prior authorizations to tell an old woman in Michigan what MRI she can or can't get, or to tell us that we don't actually need the medication that a doctor told us we needed. I don't think any of us want that. But right now, there's a real profit motive to make sure that's how it's
deployed. Do you think the country is ready for that kind of aggressive regulation?
You know what the country's not ready for? That kind of aggressive AI. And I think we need the kind of government action, the kind of democratic action to protect us from that.
Have you been tracking the Trump White House suddenly getting a little bit more protective than it was a year ago on this particular front?
Trump is always the last to figure it out, but I'm glad he finally got there. And look, when I get
Do you think that's a political reaction?
I think it is. I think they're hearing the same things I'm hearing in community.
Is this like a rumbling earthquake?
Yeah. I mean, it's an earthquake that it's a glacier. Let's just say this. It is a glacier that sits just under the water. And those are the kind that are most dangerous.
What is, from your vantage point, the attention economy?
That's an interesting question. It's the ability to monetize eyeballs and eardrums to make money. And
does it have a political context?
Well, what happens is any material that can keep attention is material that the algorithm wants to show you, or the people who created the algorithm want to make sure that you keep seeing. And to be honest, it's a byproduct of the actual economy, which is, every big tech corporation wants to keep you looking and listening. But if you want to get people's attention, if you're creating content that they want to pay attention to, the algorithm's always going to push it in people's faces.
And what have you learned about your approach to the attention economy and how it can make a political campaign more vital?
So right now, in Michigan, if you're watching television at all, you're getting bombarded by AIPAC-sponsored ads for one of my opponents. That's the old school system of doing politics. 30-second glossy ads that feed you a bunch of slop that people don't really like to pay attention to. They usually mute it. They have to watch it, they will, but it's the stuff between what they're really watching.
It's become intrusive.
Exactly. And our approach is to say, I got a real message, and I think you will like my message. And I'm going to put my message into places and in perspectives that get you to want to pay attention. And I bet that by getting you to want to pay attention to what I have to say, because it's meaningful for you in your life, that you're going to want to pay attention to what I'm offering more than you're going to pay attention to some slop ads brought to you by AIPAC or the AI super PACs or whoever else is spending money in this race. And I think what I can do is end around your system because I actually have something to say that you really want to hear.
Speaking of AI super PACs, they are getting involved in more and more races. They were heavily involved in the New York primaries just last week. Alex Boris would tell you they are formidable because he lost. Now, there are a lot of other dynamics in that race to succeed Jerry Nadler in the House. Are you hopeful or fearful that AI will come after you with both feet?
I mean, we just talked about my AI plan, right? There is, I would argue, no AI CEO who wants to be told that they just can't have their way and have unilateral control over their company because it might harm all of humankind. I in my role as a
Do you expect them to come after you?
Well, in my role as a future U.S. Senator, I expect to be able to tell them when I think they're out of bounds. And for that reason, they're going to do what they can to keep me from being in the U.S. Senate. So I expect them to come after me. Here's the thing about it. I'm already up against one $100 million super PAC in the form of AIPAC, right? And what's another one, to be quite honest? Because there's diminishing returns to those 30-second glossy ads. At some point, if you're making slop, people don't want to watch your slop. And it's funny, it's ironic, because the AI super PACs, what are they making except for slop?
I've heard it said that you once described yourself as someone who's 5 feet 9 inches tall with a 6 foot 7 inch personality.
The 6'7" was a little maybe too much, but I am actually 5'8".
What is it that is meaningful to a Michigan voter about your outsized personality?
I think my personality is secondary. That doesn't matter. But I do think Michiganders need a fighter. And I've never met a fight that I back down from, ever. And so if you want someone who's serious about taking on big AI and the folks who want to put a data center in your backyard, if you want somebody who's serious about keeping your money here at home rather than sending it to a foreign government, if you want somebody who's serious about fighting for your health care, I might just be your guy. And too often, a lot of politicians just like their spot in the Senate, just like their seat. Go along to get along. Get invited to the fancy cocktail parties. I'm not coming to your cocktail party. Don't invite me. I'm not interested. My life is in Michigan. I want to serve my neighbors and my friends in Michigan. And I want folks to know that I'm not coming to D.C. to make nice. I'm coming to D.C. because the system has been broken for people who are suffering in Michigan for too long. I want to get money out of politics, put money in your pocket, pass Medicare for all, and I am dead serious about doing that.
Define your fight against ICE.
This is an agency that has been weaponized against the Constitution itself under the pretext of immigration. ICE is not about immigration. ICE is not about the southern border. ICE is about normalizing paramilitary force on your streets. I come from a place where there was no democracy. I was born and raised in the United States, but my family immigrated from Egypt. I spent summers in Egypt in a place where there was no democracy, and I can tell you how scary that is. I remember being 13 years old, and my grandmother told me, you can't say anything about politics. So, being a bit of an iconoclast, I went downstairs and started screaming expletives about Hosni Mubarak, who was the president then. Mm-hmm. And I remember plainclothes cops coming to the house that night, asking, where's that boy? And you know what protected me? My American passport. In 1998, in Egypt. Ask yourself whether or not you think our American passports will protect us in 2026 in America. The difference between that is ICE. So if we're not serious about standing up to an agency that has gone rogue, answerable only to one man, violating the principle of the Constitution itself, then I don't think we're serious about democracy. And that's my fight.
Is it reformable?
No, I think it has to be. Look, I've worked in government agencies. Once a culture of impunity sets in to an agency, when you think you're above the law, you cannot reform that. These people who have been hired in, told that they're above the law, told one of ours, all of yours, which is exactly what the rallying cry was, when they shot someone in the back of the head, shot another person in the face. That can't be reformed. That can't be retrained. It just has to be abolished. And that's not to say that we shouldn't control our southern border. I believe we need a safe and secure southern border. I believe we need to enforce immigration policy, but not like this, because this was never about that. This is about one president and a rogue agency answerable only to him, trying to make him above the law of the land, which is the Constitution. We're celebrating our 250th anniversary. What is America except for our Constitution and our democracy and our people? So he wants an agency that's violating our people against our Constitution. That is un-American.
How did you evaluate the recent Supreme Court decisions about temporary protective status and asylum? Both Trump victories.
Yeah, I'm troubled by the attempt to rewrite our history away from the idea of immigration itself. Immigration has done great good for this country. Great good. Your family was once immigrants. My family was once immigrants. Unless you're Native American or you're Black American, your family was once immigrants. And to say that there are some people who are essentially more American than others, which is what this is about, I think that's a really, really dangerous thing. I also think that part of what has made us great is our ability to share and to welcome people under duress. You think about what the Statue of Liberty symbolizes. You think about Ellis Island. You think about the circumstances under which so many people, the Irish, Italians, folks came to America because it was a haven for them, and they built, and they worked, and they toiled, and they contributed. That's the story of this place. They want to end that story. I believe that that story is ongoing, right? We're about to celebrate 250 years. The question for us is, what's the next 250? Are we not a place where we believe in the capacity of our magnificent ideals to bring us together, to be something greater, e pluribus unum. I think people like J.D. Vance, people like Stephen Miller, people like Donald Trump don't understand what America was at her core. And what's ironic about J.D. Vance is he knows it. Think about his own family. There is a clear hypocrisy in what he says and how he lives that I think really needs to be drawn up. If America is not a place that can bring people from different backgrounds together, then what are you even doing?
There's some polling data that suggests the country is ambivalent about the 250th anniversary. Are you?
No, I love this place. I mean, I told you, I was born in Rochester Hills, Michigan. And in summers when I was a teenager, got a front row seat to what my life should have been. My cousins never had the opportunities I had. And I got to go to amazing public schools. I got vaccinated against diseases that killed an aunt and uncle I never got to meet, who died as infants. My dad watched them die before he was 5 years old. I got to go to an amazing public university. I got my medical education paid for by a federal agency. That is only possible in America. I'm running for office as an Egyptian American with a really long name that's got sounds that come out of parts of people's throats that most people don't know they have. I could never run for office if I was born in the place that I was supposed to be born in. But I got born here through an accident of history because my dad got to come here to make cars. So I love this place. But here's the crazy thing. There are kids who grew up 15 minutes away from me, whose families had been here far longer than mine, who never got those same opportunities that I got. And I want America to be America for all of her kids. That's what I hope for the next 250. So I love this place. And the thing that makes us great is that this is one of the only places in the world that has the rare gift of being able to correct herself. Right? When we make mistakes, historical mistakes, we rise up and say, that wasn't right, we could do better. And we do. We have a lot more to do better on. And I think this moment in our history is one of those moments we're going to look back at. And it's sad to be celebrating our 250th anniversary under the presidency of a man who doesn't know what America is. And I think that's why a lot of people have some ambivalence about it. But I don't want us to forget that this is an incredible country when we choose to do that amazing thing of calling ourselves to our highest ideals. And that's what I'm hoping our campaign can be about.
I'm humble enough to have been in Washington long enough to realize what circulates here is not necessarily what circulates in the rest of the country. And in the last couple of weeks, what circulated very noticeably in Washington is a Democratic conversation that runs something like this. The establishment is weak. There's a generational disconnect, but also there's this incipient radicalism, Democratic Socialists of America, who are looking like the kind of Tea Party Republicans did in 2010. And that could be a dangerous thing for the Democratic Party. That's the conversation that's gone on here. Evaluate that from your distance in Michigan.
It's interesting because we always interpret our politics.
When you say we, who do you mean?
Folks who spend a lot of time thinking about politics, especially in this town, interpret our politics like Democrats and Republicans are the main actors. They're not. The people out in communities all over this country, they're the main actors. Our job is simply to serve them. And if you analyze our politics from the frame of, let's say, a mom working 2 jobs in Detroit, or an auto worker in Macomb County, or a farmer in rural Michigan, every single one of them will tell you the same thing. It just shouldn't be this hard.
It should not be this hard.
Shouldn't be this hard to see a doctor, shouldn't be this hard to afford a home, shouldn't be this hard to send your kid to a good school, shouldn't be this hard to breathe clean air, drink clean water, shouldn't be this hard. And I think they feel failed by a self-important establishment on both sides of the political aisle. And I think we are just reinforcing that narrative by asking about politics as if it's this grand competition between one party and the other. This is not about left or right. It's not about Democrat or Republican, frankly. It is about people who are locked out and the people doing the locking out. And the party that figures that out fastest is the party that's going to win. So everybody likes to, cast this race as being about this narrative that you set up. I am not running on some sort of ideological vanguard. I'm running to serve my neighbors in Michigan. I'm running to make sure they have health care. I'm running to make sure that the corporations who've eaten their politics for way too long don't have that kind of power to pick their pockets just because they have to pay for utilities or rent or health care. I'm running because I don't think our money should be wasted dropping bombs on other people. I think it should be spent here at home. So yes, it's not surprising to me that when a crop of politicians stepping up and saying, hey, all of this is kind of dumb and none of this is working for people, that when they step up, they win elections. And I think we're seeing the same thing in Michigan. At the end of the day, though, I'm a scientist. You know, for me, everybody has to bring empirics. I'm not an ideologue. I want solutions that work. I believe in Medicare for all because I did the research, wrote a whole book on it, and it can work. I believe in getting money out of politics because it's the reason that we keep doing dumb stuff in places like DC. It's the reason our money gets sent there rather than spending money here. It's the reason AI is ungovernable right now, right? And it's seen as some sort of act of courage to be like, hey, maybe this crazy technology is about to take everybody's jobs and could, I don't know, destroy humanity, should be governed. That's not an act of courage unless you take for granted that money so dominates our politics that, you know, you can't speak up. So what's the point of running for these jobs if you can't speak up about the problems people face? And the faster this town figures all of that out, the faster we're going to realize what's happening out there.
Before I let you go, I want to name check two well-known Democrats. One, Governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Just qualified for the ballot in November, a referendum to impose a billionaire's tax in California. Gavin Newsom opposes that and said, look, if we're going to tax billionaires, we need to tax them nationwide, not just in my state.
I think we tax them everywhere. Like, start in your state and then let's do it everywhere. But here's the thing. Yeah, he's speaking to a reality here, which is that the federal government, we take for granted, does not work to do things. We take for granted, like, it can't possibly actually get this done, so it's going to be left to a state. And his point is, if I only tax billionaires in California, they're going to leave California. I actually don't think that's true. But
it's a not unreasonable fear.
And so that's why we need action at the federal level. But, like, I just want you to think about this. For a moment there, we had a trillionaire. A trillionaire. You know what that is? That's $1,000 billion. If his trillion makes 10%, I just want you to think.
And even though he's not, he's hovering very close to it. Elon Musk.
That means he makes $100 billion a year on his wealth. It is easier in this economy to make your second billion than it is to make your first 100 million. It's funny because people like to call me a socialist because I actually read about capitalism. And it turns out that the biggest risk to capitalism was always monopoly. So if you've got a few players out there hanging out with all this money, guess what they get to do? They get to buy all of the other businesses. And that means that you don't actually have capitalism. So even the proponents of capitalism should be like, listen, man, if you have $1 billion, you won capitalism. You won. That's it. You won. You beat the biggest boss, right? In my generations, you beat Bowser, okay?
Right.
Now, we can tax you some of your wealth. You'll still have more money than you know what to do with. You just won't be able to have power over the whole economy like you think you want to have. So that we can take some of that money and go and invest it in things like schools and healthcare and infrastructure, which I always learned were the soil of capitalism. Like, you need people to have a good education. You need them to be able to travel functional roads. You need them to have healthcare when they need it. And then you enable them to go and start really great businesses and do great things. You know how many millions you can have for 1 billion? 1,000. So I'd rather live in an economy that has 1,000 millionaires than 1 billionaire. I think most people would agree with that.
Last name check before I let you go. Michelle Obama used to have a phrase, when they go low, we go high. You have a variation on that. What is it?
Listen, I deeply respect the First Lady. I do think, though, that Democrats need to recognize, and I learned this the hard way, right? I was a kid named Abdul in school. I learned the hard way that if you let them take your lunch, guess what happens? You don't eat lunch. And I want to eat lunch. I want everybody to eat lunch. So if they're going to show up and try to bully us, don't be surprised when we hit back. I'm not going to start the fight, but I'll end it.
I've heard it said that you said when they go low, we choke them out.
I mean, their choice to go low. Don't go low. I'm just saying. Like, the point that I'm making here is this. I don't want our politics to be a fight. I write policy books. I would love to have a policy debate with my conservative colleagues. The problem, though, is that under Donald Trump, all of them seem to think that bullying the other side or bullying the American public does enough to hold power. And I think the problem with it is that Democrats, we haven't necessarily understood that. And so we show up and we're unwilling to hit back. So I'm never going to throw the first punch. I'm never going to go low on somebody. But if you are choosing to enact policy that is bullying Michiganders, don't be surprised when I stand right back up to you. And I think that's the thing that Democrats need to learn, is that when we talk about having a fighter, you got to be willing to stand up to bullies. And I think we need that kind of energy in the Democratic Party. And I'll stand up to bullies on either side. Chuck Schumer want to stand up? Fine. You know, don't be surprised if I stand right back up to you, right? AI super PACs, APAC, I don't back down. And I think we need Democrats who don't back down, because at the end of the day, we're not fighting for ourselves. I mean, honestly, I've had a nice life. I told you, like, my life is an accident in history. There are too many people in my state who have not, as a function of exactly this kind of politics where we let bullies win. And I think we need people who are willing to stand up and push back. And we need that. Say this figuratively, right? Nobody's looking for actual violence here. But if you're going to name call, if you're going to stand up and think that you can get away with a kind of politics where you just tell people how it is and everyone's going to back down, no. Because I know who I'm fighting for. 10 million people in my state who deserve a lot better, and they need somebody who's going to show up and fight for them.
Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.